This is the Cyprus News Digest with Rosie Haralambous.
Coming up on this week's programme, in light of plans to penalise doctors for conducting too many caesarean sections, the Obstetricians and Gynaecologists Society says women should take the lead and it's up to them to be educated.
We think the first action is to educate the pregnant women or even earlier, the girls from the school years, to educate women and even their husbands and their partners for natural birth, to know the advantages of natural birth and the disadvantages of caesarean sections.
And there's been strong condemnation of the government's plans to limit the freedom of the press and free speech. The Health Ministry and our health insurance organisation have prepared a plan to incentivise gynaecologists and obstetricians to perform natural births instead of caesareans. Now, you may remember that several years ago we spoke to the Society of Obstetricians and Gynaecologists here in Cyprus about the high level of caesarean sections on the island, and apparently that hasn't really changed. However, is it a good idea to start cutting the financial rewards that obstetricians and gynaecologists get according to how many caesarean sections they do? The idea is to punish them, as far as I can see, and I'm not sure that that is the way we should be going. So I contacted the Vice President of the Cyprus Obstetrician and Gynaecological Society. He is Gabriel Kalakoutas, and he joins us now. Gabriel, your thoughts on this, please?
Well, I agree that the caesarean section rate in Cyprus is very high. It's the highest in the European Union. It's about 62%. And we should try and reduce the caesarean section rate, and we should promote natural birth. The Ministry of Health decided, and we agreed with this, and we took part in the policy making of the Ministry of Health to reduce caesarean sections and increase natural birth. And we decided that there are several ways to do it. One, the way now that the general health system tried to improve and to apply one of the ways to reduce the caesarean sections by penalizing the doctors in their fees is not the correct way, is not the first action to do. We think the first action is to educate the pregnant women or even earlier, the girls from the school years, to educate women and even their husbands, their partners, for natural birth, to know the advantages of natural birth and the disadvantages of caesarean section.
Right. Can I take you up on that? Because it does seem to me, from my experience of, and this is before GSE, but my experience of obstetrics and gynecology here in Cyprus, there is very little prenatal care, isn't there? There's not very much postnatal care either. But we spoke recently on the programme to the Minister of Health, who was saying we have a shortage of midwives. We surely also have a shortage of nursing staff who are able to, as you just said, educate people when they become pregnant and tell them very clearly about the pros and cons of natural and caesarean births.
Yes, this is where we should concentrate, with lectures from the Ministry of Health about natural labor, from the mass media, from the social media, from schools. So we need to educate women and to change the culture of pregnancy, and this applies to the doctors as well. Doctors, obstetricians should be trained and be educated continuously, and this should be a necessity from the Ministry of Health. Doctors should have some continuous medical education, and they know the advantages. They should know the advantages of natural health, but there should be protocols and guidelines about natural birth that all doctors should follow. So that's another way of reducing caesarean sections.
Sorry, let me ask you about the training that obstetricians and gynaecologists get, because surely one of the most basic first points should be the fact that childbirth is not an illness and that natural childbirth is infinitely preferable not only for the health of the baby but also for the health of the mother.
Yes, I agree, but if we take the new gynecologists or the young midwives, because there's so little natural births, or talking about education in Cyprus, they're not getting enough experience in natural childbirth, and especially the complications of natural childbirth, because we see most of the births are caesarean section, so there's a little practice from junior doctors, obstetricians, and from midwives. So we need to encourage, and the Ministry of Health should encourage and pay for continuous medical education for the obstetricians, to pay or for their to go to congresses, to go to practical workshops about natural childbirth. So there's a lot of other things the Ministry of Health could do before coming to penalize the doctors for doing a lot of caesarean sections. And we know it's been tried in the National Health Service in England to apply something similar to what the Ministry of Health is going to do now, to penalize the doctors for doing caesarean sections. They tried, but they failed. They say it's not one of the best actions to do to reduce the caesarean sections. And I say that the majority of obstetricians, they do caesarean section not for financial reasons, because it's only 100 euros the difference between natural childbirth and caesarean section, 100 euros extra that the obstetrician would get. So it's not worth the 100 euros for the obstetrician for the time he spends in labor and all the responsibility he takes.
I find it very difficult, Gabriel, and you need to enlighten me on this. Surely all doctors take refresher courses, they keep up to date with the latest thinking, and not only the latest but the oldest thinking is natural childbirth is best. So I can't understand why anyone would elect to do a caesarean, or indeed would agree if a pregnant lady had an elective caesarean. There is a habit here, is there not, for women to say, oh no, don't let's even go there, I don't want the pain, I want a caesarean, and many of their doctors go along with that.
Yes, one of the reasons that caesarean section rate increase is the wish of the woman to have caesarean section. This is now a medical indication. In the past, this wasn't a medical indication for doing caesarean section. So if we explain to the pregnant woman that there are advantages for natural childbirth and caesarean section is more dangerous, but if she's not convinced and she still has tocophobia, that's the fear of labor and birth, then the doctor is obliged to do caesarean section. That's one reason why caesarean sections have been increased. The other reason now, which concerns obstetricians, is the defensive medicines they do, because in Cyprus as well, the amount of doctors being sued for medical negligence has been increased, and we have recently a court decision of 2 million euros that the obstetrician should pay for medical negligence. The most insurance companies in Cyprus, they insure you for 500,000, not for 2 million. So a doctor, if he wants to not to take any risk, to control or to follow up the labor for a long time, instead of taking this risk that something may go wrong, he decides earlier to do caesarean section than late. I'm not saying this is the main reason, but it's one of the reasons why caesarean section rate has increased.
Is that compatible with the Hippocratic Oath, that you don't take a risk that is obviously of benefit to your patient because you might be sued and it might cost you financially?
Yes, we know if a obstetrician, if he has one case of medical negligence and he pays to have 2 million, I agree with you, yes, but being humans and being in practice, I wouldn't say all the doctors, but some doctors would do defensive medicine to avoid being sued for medical negligence.
I was also a little bit shocked to read, I think she's the president of your society, Dr. Eliseu, being quoted, perhaps wrongly in the newspaper, as saying that one of the dangers of this proposal from the Health Ministry is that, and I quote, "the time may come when doctors need to perform a caesarean and may decide not to." And once again, I find that very difficult to understand. Surely, as an obstetrician and gynaecologist, if you see that a caesarean must be performed for the health of the mother and the baby, you're not going to say, well, I'm not going to do it because that'll put me over the limit and it'll cost me X.
No, I agree with you. The statement from Dr. Eliseu was, I wouldn't say misinterpreted, but there is some psychological pressure. As you said, if a doctor thinks caesarean section should be done for medical indication, it should be for medical indication, for nothing else. So I agree with you, that statement was misinterpreted.
Can I ask you what sort of paper trail, if you like, I can't think of another word for it, doctors must leave on the patient's notes when they're making decisions like this? I mean, if you've got a woman who comes to you and you're the first gynaecologist who says, yep, you're pregnant, congratulations, what happens after that? Do you refer her to prenatal care? Does she go to lessons about the breathing and the benefits, for example, of breastfeeding? Because that's another thing that is much more difficult to achieve, I believe, if you've had a caesarean than a natural birth. And all of this information surely should be made available in the very first weeks of pregnancy, along with don't drink and don't smoke.
Yes, I agree with you. That's why I said one of the actions to reduce caesarean section is to educate pregnant women, to provide lectures for them about natural birth, about breathing exercises, as you said. There's a lot of work to be done by midwives or other health workers, because obstetricians haven't got the time to do all this. So the Ministry of Health could help with this, to organize this, and it should be free for all pregnant women. So I agree. And once the woman is well informed, she would ask her obstetricians why you decide to do caesarean section. She will question him and decide together if she's going to have caesarean section or not. But to do this, you must know something about the subject. So you should be informed about the complications and dangers of caesarean section.
Now, when I had children in the UK, I was asked to fill in a birth plan. Do we do that in Cyprus? It talked, and I had to write down whether or not I wanted pain relief, and if so, what sort of pain relief. Would I want an epidural or only if it was desperately necessary? And likewise, would I consent to a caesarean section in an emergency? It wasn't even an option to say, would you prefer to have a caesarean section?
Well, birth plan is not organized in Cyprus. It depends mainly on the individual obstetrician. Some obstetricians do, but there isn't an organized plan for a birth plan.
Shouldn't that be something that the society is promoting among all its members? So this is clarified, and in the case of caesarean sections, the OGP or the health ministry or whoever else can refer back to the birth plan and say, this woman chose to do a caesarean, and so we can't blame the doctor.
Wait, whenever a caesarean section is done, the woman must always consent. So, yes.
There's a difference, sorry, Gabriel, there's a difference between consenting. For example, I'm in labour and you're telling me as my obstetrician that things are not going well, the baby's getting stressed, you would like to do a caesarean, and I say, okay. That's very different from me filling out a birth plan before I've even gone into labour and electing to have this without even trying the natural way.
Yes, I agree. We lag behind this and there's nothing organized. So it's another action from the Ministry of Health and from obstetricians to have this birth plan and something that not going to reduce the caesarean section rate in the short term, but in the long term. So I agree one of the actions should be this. So there's a lot of other actions to do instead of having the first action to penalize the obstetricians for doing caesarean section.
How can the society engage with all its members and persuade them that A, they need to offer prenatal care, so a lot of this goes away, and B, to ask their opinions about how many caesarean sections they do? I'm sure that you must have figures, and there must be certain doctors who are way over the 60%, because that's an average, and many others who are way under.
Yes, it's difficult for the society to do this, but we have the unit of at the Ministry of Health that follows your health, and they have very detailed numbers how many caesarean sections are done by a doctor or by a clinic. So that we have the statistics, we have them very well. It's not the society's task, but we have them. We have the statistics, and another action to reduce caesarean section rate is to study all this individually. Say why this doctor did caesarean section, what were the obstetric reasons, and there is a good plan for this called the Robson plan, where you study every caesarean section and you know the obstetrical conditions that the section was done, and by studying this and seeing a doctor that he does a lot of caesarean sections and why, yes, he may change and improve his caesarean section rate.
Well, isn't that something that the society, maybe in conjunction with OGP and the Health Ministry, could do and implement?
Yes, we took part in the national plan to reduce caesarean section rate, and we agree that one of the actions should be to study every caesarean section and to have details about it and statistics, and that's another action to be taken to reduce caesarean section rate.
You say to be taken, but it hasn't been taken yet?
No, that's why we say is the first. It's only recently that this strategic plan has been announced, and the first thing the Ministry of Health or the health insurance did was to penalize the doctors. So now it's starting to implement the strategic plan to reduce caesarean section. It's only recently that's been announced and it's been in effect.
Gabriel, I have to ask you this. I mentioned at the very beginning of our chat that it's at least, I would think, probably 5 or 7 years ago that I spoke to whoever was then the head of the Gynae Society, and they agreed, yes, far too many caesarean sections, we need to work on that. What's been done in those intervening years?
Not much. That's why the caesarean section rate has been rising. It was 5 years ago, I think 55%. Now it's 62%, and I predict it's going to rise again. So to reduce the caesarean section rate, it needs time. It's a long term. As I said, it's mainly education that's going to bring the caesarean section down, and to change the culture about birth of women and doctors in Cyprus. That's why in Scandinavian countries we see the caesarean section rate is not very high, because women are more educated as far as birth goes, and they, as you mentioned, the birth plan as well. So now the strategic plan is going to be implemented, and as I said, I don't see results very soon. It may take years to reduce the caesarean section rate.
Okay, what is your recommendation at the next meeting of the Obs and Gynae Society going to be? Because it seems to me that you are, if you like, the umbrella for all our obstetricians and gynaecologists. I'm assuming that all those practicing are members of your society, and so you surely are in a position to lead and to, in a sense, also use the stick as well as the carrot and say we have to get these figures down. How are you going to do that?
Well, we recommend to all our members to follow the strategic plan from the Ministry of Health. And we are a scientific society. We are not a society, we are not a union society. So the main responsibility lies with the Ministry of Health and the health insurance YE. So our organization is mainly a scientific organization. It hasn't got union responsibilities.
Okay, but are not all obstetricians and gynaecologists members of your society? What do they have to do to get the license to practice here?
Again, it comes to the Cyprus Medical Association to set standards and demand points for continuous medical education. We haven't got any executive powers. Our organization is mainly scientific and advisory to the Ministry of Health.
So what's the Medical Association doing about this? Because, let's even go what I was discussing last week with our Minister of Health about, and that is the slow pace at which that association seems to function.
Well, we need improvements, so we have to continue to improve it. So we have to continue to improve it.
So basically it's the Medical Association, you're saying, that needs to get a handle on this, on all its members who are obstetricians and gynaecologists, and start educating them, start, if not penalising them, encouraging them to do the right thing.
Yes, we are part of the Medical Association as a scientific society, and it's mainly advisory society. But again, I say the executive powers with the Medical Association, which are in law the association responsible for doctors, and the Ministry of Health and the insurance organization, YE.
Gabriel, can I ask you to give us one last word? I mean, I know, for example, and we're back to caesareans and the effect it can have on breastfeeding. I know for a fact that if you breastfeed your baby for at least 6 months, you are protecting yourself from breast cancer, for example. Do women know any of this in Cyprus before they start having families?
Well, we have, or the Ministry of Health has booklets about breastfeeding and about the advantages and disadvantages. So that's another area that women need to be educated. And I'm saying there is not organized. It depends from obstetrician to obstetrician. So again, that's something to be promoted from the Ministry of Health, and to give free leaflets about the advantages and disadvantages of breastfeeding, and have more educational lectures about breastfeeding.
It might be a good idea for them to ask what percentage of births are caesareans, and ask the doctor as well for his opinion about natural birth. It's therefore up to women to, as you say, educate themselves, but we need to give them help, do we not? So should we not be in schools during our sex education lessons also be including prenatal health and care?
I entirely agree with you. One of the actions this strategic plan is going to take in the future is to publicize the caesarean section rate per doctor and per clinic. But until this is done, as you said, yes, women should ask, and it's difficult unless you are well informed. Yes, see what the caesarean section rate of each clinic or doctor is.
Well, I'll have to leave it there, I think, Gabriel. Many thanks for your time discussing this, because it is something that I think a lot of women are concerned about. We've been talking to the Vice President of the Cyprus Obstetrics and Gynaecological Society, Gabriel Galakoutas. Gabriel, thanks for your time.
Thank you.
This is the Cyprus News Digest with Rosie Haralambous.
And in other news this week, a topic that I hope we'll be covering in a future programme. The International Press Institute this week joined a chorus of voices against the very contentious fake news bill that is currently being discussed in Cyprus Parliament. Journalism and publisher groups have warned that the draconian penalties will stifle an already struggling industry. The Media Freedom Rapid Response, which is a Europe-wide mechanism that tracks, monitors and responds to violations of press and media freedom in the European Union, have warned that the bill, quote, poses a significant threat to media pluralism and democracy, and the existence of such laws, quote, has often been a tool for political control over information rather than one to enhance its quality. Under the proposed law, the Attorney General will have the power to determine what constitutes defamation, which will be reclassified from a civil offence to a criminal one. Deputy Attorney General Savas Angelidis said the bill is necessary for drawing the line between freedom of speech and recklessness. AKEL MP Irini Haralambidis has notified the Organisation for Security and Cooperation in Europe over the matter. She is, of course, herself a former journalist and TV presenter. The bill has been discussed by the House Legal Committee for 3 years now. It has met over 10 times on this particular matter. The MFRR highlighted the fact that evidence shows that laws against disinformation have repeatedly been exploited by repressive authorities to influence public opinion on what is considered to be true or false, offensive, dangerous, or seditious. Cyprus Press Freedom Index dropped 10 points this year, according to Reporters Without Borders. Well, that about wraps up this edition of the Cyprus News Digest. Many thanks for your company. Hope you'll join me next week. Till we meet again, take care and God bless. Bye-bye now.